Hello and welcome to another episode of EKU Online's eCast series. EKU Online's mission is to change lives by providing access to affordable and high-quality degree programs in meaningful disciplines that positively impact our society. We thank you for joining us today. Today we are joined by Michael Fore, assistant professor in the College of Business and a practicing attorney. Professor Fore was born in Richmond, Kentucky, and graduated from Model Laboratory High School. He continued his education, graduating from Tulane University in 1999 with degrees in both political science and history. In 2002, he obtained his Juris Doctor from Wake Forest University School of Law, and he was admitted to the Kentucky Bar in 2002 and to the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Kentucky in 2003. Professor Fore's legal practice focuses on civil litigation, contract disputes, business law, estates, and insurance disputes. He's a past president of the Madison County Bar Association and has worked with various community organizations and nonprofit causes. So welcome, Professor Fore. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate you being here with us.
Well, thank you for having me, Sam. I appreciate it. I think a lot of the work that eCampus does, and it's always a pleasure to work with you guys.
Well, likewise. As we get started here today, Professor Fore, just please share with us a little bit about the courses that you teach for the College of Business. Tell us how you manage to kind of juggle a thriving and no doubt very busy practice with teaching as well.
Well, the two courses that I teach through eCampus and at regular campus are, first of all, GBU 204, the Legal Environment of Business. The designation will be switching to Business 204 for the fall semester, but it's the same course. It's a law survey class that's required of all undergraduate folks in the business program. The other class I get to teach is Accounting 440, which is accounting law, and that class is designed to be sort of a prep course for accountants who are accounting students who plan to take the CPA. It's focused towards the business law sections of the CPA exam. So in terms of balancing things, you read my practice areas, and I'm probably the luckiest guy you'll ever get to talk to. I mean, I love to practice law, but I love more to teach, and I'm lucky enough to be able to teach kind of what I do when I'm not in the classroom. And so there's so much overlap between the real world problems I help folks with at my practice and then the academic problems and the knowledge that we're trying to give to folks who take the classes. It's really a pretty easy transition. There's a lot of time management involved, but frankly, my doing a little bit of practice still really informs my teaching a lot. And for both classes, particularly for Business 204, my focus is always on practical knowledge. As a lawyer, most of the time when I meet people, it's because they have a problem, and teaching, you get to be on the other side of that equation. And what I want to do is give students information that they can have so they don't wind up with those problems. And so the two things sort of feed on each other, and I'm just very fortunate to be able to do that.
I'd imagine as a student having a professor who's also a practicing professional in law, I mean, as far as that goes, that's also a kind of a benefit for them as well, seeing you still in the field there, having practicing experience.
Well, I hope so. And I think it is. It certainly keeps me current on what the issues folks are seeing and the trends we see, whether it's in business formations or any other aspect of the law. I'll give you some examples. The way businesses use arbitration agreements or methods other than litigation to solve problems. Those things are constantly changing. Contract law, the trends that we see in how businesses contract, I see that and then can pass that right to the classroom, that sort of practical knowledge. This past year, we had a good example of that in 2020. Of course, everything was unique and we dealt with things we hadn't dealt with before. And the big issue in business contract law were these what are called force majeure clauses, or a clause that basically says in a contract that when an act of God happens or something that's totally unforeseen, the deal is off and we can set aside the contract. Well, those had been just an academic exercise up until 2020, but that became the hot topic in real world contract law. And I was able to pass that along to the classroom as I sort of saw how courts developed with that.
I don't know if that's wrong place, wrong time, or right place, wrong time, or right place, right time. But
wrong place, but bad time perhaps for all of us. But you know, there's a lot that I enjoy about being able to stay relevant on both points, and I think that does help students.
Absolutely. Your courses seem to center around the legal and ethical aspects of business. And considering that these are rather broad topics, what do you focus on with your students? And are there particular legal or ethical matters that really need the attention of your students?
Well, you know, in terms of ethics, business ethics is a foundational thing that you've got to have if you're going to succeed, and you also have to have as part of an education at Eastern. We don't want folks to leave here without that foundation and that mooring for whatever challenges they face in life. In terms of the law that folks need to know, I approach it very much from a practical standpoint. I know what people need to know and what the problems are when they don't know those things. So many of the topics we deal with in class, I'll talk about the importance of issue spotting. Nobody can know all the answers to all the laws in the world. But if as a business person or a lawyer or an undergraduate student, if you know when to look for help and when to ask questions and the cues that are out there that say, gosh, this is a potential problem, or this is something I need to think about. If you can do that in terms of legal issues and you know when to ask for help and when to be cautious, that can keep you out of an awful lot of trouble in life and in school and in whatever. And so that sort of practical approach is really the foundation of the way I approach things.
Fantastic. Professor Fore, you have a reputation as being a highly engaging and creative instructor. Could you share with our audience a little bit about your approach to online teaching as it differs from, you know, maybe your on-campus modality, and then some of the tools you use to enhance the learning experience?
Yeah, it is a really different experience. You know, I start with the learning goals. What do the kids need to know? What do our students need to take away to succeed wherever they go? Online learning is a different world, and it requires some different approaches. It requires, in some ways, more of our students than an in-person class. My in-person classes are very different from the online experience. In person, I will go and I'll lecture, and I'll talk, and I'll tell stories, and people can listen, and they'll ask questions, and we have a talk, and that's the class. And nobody wants to watch a hour-long Zoom session or an hour-long YouTube video of me chattering away. So you've got to figure out different ways to deliver the same content and get folks to the same learning goal. I've tried a lot of different things, and my advice as a starting point for any instructor that's moving into online would be to take the PD2 class through eCampus. You know, I got involved in online education, I guess maybe 3 years ago when I first started doing this, and I entered it, you know, I was a middle-aged person who'd never taken an online class or conceived of having an online class. For me, my classroom experience was in person. You sit in the room, you take notes, you get tested on it. And that PD2 course really gave me an idea of, okay, here's what the student experience is going to be like. In terms of constructing my classes, I've tried to use different media, be it short videos. We don't want anybody to have to sit in front of a screen any longer than they have to. Short videos, PowerPoints where appropriate, different kinds of exercises, different kinds of activities, discussion boards where they fit, just different tools to try to keep people engaged, because it really does require, in a lot of ways, more work to succeed in the online environment, and then probably more work still to leave with the knowledge base that's equivalent of where we want it to be. So there's a lot more on the student, and I think you want to try to make that a varied and as engaging an experience as you can. There's a lot of other approaches that I've tried to do, but I think at the end of the day, that's the key, is to try to find different things to do to keep folks engaged.
It's really interesting to hear faculty say the time management issue, because we see that many times with our veteran teachers who've been teaching on campus for 30 years. It's like, it's a whole different approach, not just for the student. It requires more organization and planning, but even for the faculty as well.
And I'll tell you, as faculty, there's good and bad parts to it, but the teaching part, the work on my part for an online course, is really done it's kind of in the off season. It's before the class gets geared up. You've got to build that experience, what it's going to be week to week or day to day, where people will stay engaged. Whereas if you're in person, it's a day-to-day process. Where did we leave off? What do we need to address? Where do we go the next day? During the course of the semester, my focus is giving kids good feedback promptly. I think we all expect, when we do things online, whether it's I'm ordering from Amazon or I'm sending somebody an email, we like that quick feedback. And to the extent we can give quality feedback and do it quickly, I think we try to focus on that, and then keep engaged with students. I love getting student emails, or when people post and they say, hey, I've got a question in the virtual office. I'm thrilled by that, because that's somebody who's engaged and they want to know more. And gosh, that's what I'm here for, is to try to give them that more, whatever that more is.
That's a great answer. On that note, with the program completely online, what do the demographics of your student population look like? What kind of students is the program, and in particular your courses, attracting? And then what kind of students seem to find success in your courses?
Well, as to the last part, I think anybody can succeed in the course, and in whichever course I have, you can succeed there. It's going to be a function of putting in the work and following the instructions and doing the activities that are there. Same thing with an in-person course. If you put forth C-level effort and you count your points and you get to that threshold and then you check out, you're going to have a C-level result. But if you want to succeed, you're going to be able to. That effort is on you. Now, the first part of your question, give me that again, and I've kind of lost track of.
It was a lot to that question. With the program completely online, what do the demographics of your students?
Type of students? Yeah, it's different. The first few years I taught online learners were traditionally going to be folks that had a career, that perhaps had come back to get an accounting certificate, or they were finishing up that undergraduate degree that they were a few credits away from. And those were a lot of students who, many of them already had good time management skills, because they managed their career or their family, their regular life. Since, of course, 2020, we've seen a little shift in that. And there's a lot more traditional undergraduate type students there, who have perhaps the advantage of their not having to juggle some of those things, but they have the disadvantage of not having that experience in the time management. And online courses, no matter how you structure them, you've got to be willing, if you want to succeed at them, you have to budget the time to work, and you've got to budget the time to do whatever that learning expectation is. You've got to put in the work. And so it's been different. And I think this summer course, the summer one courses that I have now, this is really the first semester where I've had sort of what I perceive as kind of an even mix between those two groups of the traditional undergrad students, and then there's still a good chunk of folks that are maybe the more traditional online learners. But my guess is that in the future, that line's only going to blur as we go forward, because online's here for everybody. You can't deny the advantages of it.
Yeah, I think we're starting to just now see the silver linings of this past year that we've had, and the hybridization of this
Mm.
approach is like you said. I think we're going to see more and more of that, which seems like it's a good thing ultimately.
I think so, and you know, um, I remember taking that PD2 course with then Provost Vice, and she talked about how she was a high touch individual. She was the kind of person who wanted to shake your hand and look you in the eye and get to know you. And I'm kind of like that too. It is a transition to move online, but the world that we're in, we've got to be able to do it. And I think about the examples of many of the online students I've had. Traditionally, that when they introduce themselves, you talk to them or you interact with them on discussion boards, you find out these are folks who are perhaps not traditional Eastern students. They come to us from all over the country and all over the world. And that's pretty neat to be able, first of all, to deliver an EKU education to those folks, but also to let those folks be part of Eastern's community of learning, and the neat and the diverse and the different experiences that we get from that is really fantastic. And I think like you say, online's here to stay, and we've got to find out ways to succeed at this. I think that probably the technology is going to change. I can't imagine in 10 years from now we'll still be using Blackboard, but maybe we will. I don't know. But there's good, maybe we'll have holograms or something we can lecture on. I don't know what the world will hold, but I think it's a pretty neat time to be in online learning.
As a practicing attorney and a professor, what is it that you want your students to really come away with in your courses? I mean, what do you want them to remember 10 years from now on when they're faced with an ethical challenge?
Well, for an ethical challenge, I mean, they've got to find their personal moral compass. That's something probably that they've got long before they ever get to me. If we raise the awareness of those kinds of issues, if in taking a business ethics class, they get to consider and do maybe a real good critical thinking analysis of an ethics issue, those are really good repetitions and practice. Let's learn from somebody else's mistakes, not have to make our own. And to the extent that we can give that experience to students, I think in terms of the ethics component, that's the real good takeaway, is that we want students to have awareness of ethical issues, to know that sometimes it's okay to say no, or it's okay to go a different course, that they've got to be conscious of it, because that awareness of ethics, for many years, Dr. Judy Spain taught the same course that I now do, and she did a great program, Ethics Awareness Week. And I think that's a great way to think about ethics issues, is that we do want that awareness. You can't prepare everybody. Here's always the right answer to an ethical problem, or here's the tool that's going to get you out of it. But if we can get students to be more aware when they go on with their careers of ethical challenges and how to confront them, I think that's the only tool you can really give folks.
That's a great answer. If you had to give an elevator pitch to a handful of business students, and you had about 30 seconds to tell them why they should take your courses, what in essence do you say to those students?
The elevator pitch is, I think, and this is an easy one for me, everybody knows that the law is going to shape the environment of business they're in. And the basics of the legal knowledge that they're going to need, that's what they're going to get. They're going to know when to stay out of trouble, what to be aware of, when to spot those issues where they need to maybe call a lawyer or ask for help. That's what they're going to get. Now, the perhaps easier answer for my course is that Business 204, or GBU 204 as it's been called before, is a prerequisite for all these business programs. So they really don't have a choice. I don't have to pitch people very often. They're there, and that's a great thing. I'm happy to have them. I wish I could teach more kids every semester.
What do you see some of the leading causes to be of those who get caught up in unethical and even illegal behaviors in business? I mean, are there trends there, or is it just simple greed that bursts these actions? Or do you think there's more to it than that?
Gosh, that's probably too, it's probably not a simple answer to that. Why do people do bad things? Why do people do things that that when you look at in retrospect, you go, oh my gosh, what a terrible behavior. Why would someone do that? I think greed, all the human vices that drive people and historically have driven people to do bad things or to do things that we look back and consider immoral. Those are true in the business world the same way they are in people's personal lives or wherever. I mean, it's the same motivations. I think that, you can talk about, and we could write, destroy forests, writing books about the causes of ethical failures. In some cases, it's, a product of groupthink where you have a culture that embraces that. One of the things that we've tried to do in some of our recent ethics writings as part of the course is ask students, hey, what do you think the cause is of this situation? And sometimes it's perhaps a legal problem, something the law allows to happen, but we could all agree unethical. I think a good example of that, or at least not ideal, would be pharmaceutical price rises. You've heard accounts in the news of whether it's EpiPens or the pharmaceutical companies that will raise their prices because they essentially control the market for a drug. That's perfectly legal, but it's probably not the best social practice. Some things are structural problems, maybe in an organization. You think about Wells Fargo giving incentives to their bankers to open dozens and dozens of checking accounts that people didn't need. That's kind of a problem with the way that company was structured in their incentives. And then you go back to the original point that some things they're bad people doing bad things. And so I think we've got to be conscious of all of the different ways you get there.
The landscape now too also, and I think we try to impart this on students, that it's much easier to catch people doing bad things now with just the way the world is.
It probably is. There's certainly a lot more awareness in the world. One of the tests that a scholar, Laura Nash, has proposed for is this an ethical behavior is the question of, well, if there was a story on the front page of the newspaper about you, and this is what you did, would you be happy for your neighbors and friends to read that newspaper? And if the answer is no, perhaps you should rethink your course of action. I mean, that's a pretty good test for a lot of things, right?
I would say that's 101. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good way of looking at it. That's great. As you work with a myriad of students with diverse backgrounds and experiences, are you encouraged or discouraged in what the future holds for the world of business?
Oh, I would say I'm definitely encouraged. Students are, in terms of the technology piece, students are far more sophisticated about what they can do online and the way to use these online technologies to in their education and then also for business. I think folks are generally more tech ready. I think there's also encouragement that so many of the students we see in the business school have a great motivation, a lot of self-motivation. And, it's always encouraging for me as a faculty member to just to get to talk to our kids and see where they come from and where they want to go. We've got so many great stories here at EKU. And the best kids at EKU could go against the best kids at any school in the country. They really are top notch, and it's just so encouraging to see the places where our recent graduates go. I think I'm very encouraged for the future business world. We have some amazing students at EKU, that's for sure.
Professor Fore, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today?
I would encourage anybody, the GBU 204 class or the Business 204 class is usually full, but I would say if there's anybody from outside of the business school who wants to take it, I would encourage them to, because it's really a law survey course, and I'd love to see folks, and we do see a handful of folks from across campus in there. It's great to get that foundation, and I think wherever you go, that course is going to be a benefit to you. But and for folks who are not familiar with EKU's eCampus, I would just pitch the resources that you guys have there in terms of assisting educators and students through online learning, because you really do some neat stuff.
Thank you so much for your time, Professor Fore. It's been great getting to talk to you on this very strange, rainy day we're having here in
Yes.
in Kentucky. But it's been great getting to know you a little better, and we do appreciate your time and your commitment to our students here at EKU.
Well, I'm happy to be here. EKU's a great place, and being able to teach is really incredibly rewarding. I mean, the old cliche about changing lives, that stuff is really true. It's true. And the students that I've seen go through here, I mean, it's been just a remarkable experience for me. Really, really treasure it.
Well, we know your students appreciate you because we read the reviews, but we appreciate you as well. So thank you again for your time today.
Thank you.